One night, this girl is driving down the road with her boyfriend in the car, and she decides she wants to murder him. And so, kaboom, she slams the car directly into a brick wall. Now, the girl's name is McKenzie Shirilla. And McKenzie's 17, living in Strongsville, Ohio, and she's kind of a wannabe influencer, or at least her social media posts suggest that she wants to be one. And honestly, she'd probably make a great influencer. I mean, people say she's entitled, she's a mean girl, she's kind of a bully. So she'd fit right in. But before we get into all that, let's talk about who McKenzie really is. She's a pretty typical suburban teenager, at least on the surface. She goes to Strongsville High School, she's got her little group of friends, and she's constantly posting on social media. TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, she's on it. And like a lot of teenagers these days, she's obsessed with getting likes and followers and being seen as cool or edgy. But here's the thing about McKenzie. She's not just your average attention-seeking teenager. There's something darker going on beneath the surface. People who know her describe her as manipulative, controlling, and honestly, kind of scary when she doesn't get her way. She's the type of person who throws tantrums when things don't go according to her plan, and she's not above using threats or intimidation to get what she wants. Despite being all that, there's one guy who still really likes her. Her boyfriend, this guy Dominic Russo. And Dominic and McKenzie, they met back in school and they've been dating on and off for the past few years. Now Dominic, he's 20 years old, and by all accounts, he's a really good guy. He's got a job, he's got his own place, and he's the type of person who's always trying to help people out. His friends and family describe him as loyal, funny, and someone who always sees the best in people, even when maybe he shouldn't. Why have they been dating on and off? Well, apparently McKenzie's not a very good girlfriend. Like, they fight a lot and she can be really mean to Dominic when they fight, berating him, calling him names, threatening to key his car. And it's not just empty threats either. She actually follows through on this stuff sometimes. There are multiple instances where she's damaged his property or made his life miserable just because she was mad about something. But here's the crazy part. Dominic keeps taking her back. Every time they break up, somehow they end up getting back together. And his friends, they're like, dude, why do you keep doing this to yourself? But Dominic, he's got this savior complex or something. He thinks he can fix her, thinks he can be the one to help her become a better person. He sees these glimpses of who she could be, and he holds onto that hope. Their relationship is what you'd call toxic, and I mean that in the most literal sense. McKenzie is controlling, possessive, and manipulative. She monitors who Dominic talks to, where he goes, what he does. If he doesn't respond to her texts fast enough, she'll blow up his phone. If he hangs out with his friends without her, she'll show up uninvited and cause a scene. And the fights? Oh man, the fights are legendary. We're talking about screaming matches that last for hours, where she'll call him every name in the book, threaten to hurt herself or him, and generally make his life a living hell. And then just when he's had enough and is ready to walk away, she'll turn on the charm. She'll cry, she'll apologize, she'll promise to change, and somehow she always manages to reel them back in. Their friends can see what's happening, but what are they supposed to do? They try to talk to Dominic about it, but he's convinced that he loves her and that she loves him. He makes excuses for her behavior, saying she's just going through a rough time or that she doesn't mean it when she says those things. Classic signs of someone in an abusive relationship, but when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see clearly. One incident that really stands out happened earlier in 2022. They're hanging out at Dominic's place, and they get into some stupid argument about something. Nobody even remembers what it was about. But McKenzie, she just loses it. She starts screaming at him, throwing things, and when he tries to calm her down, she threatens to key his car. And this isn't just a casual threat. She's done it before. I will key your car if you do not let me in the house, she says. And you can hear in her voice that she's serious. And Dominic, he's like, you're going to key my car? And she's like, I will if you don't let me in the house. Yes. And that's just a regular Tuesday for them. This is the kind of behavior that Dominic is dealing with on a regular basis. But somehow he keeps coming back for more. His friends are like, dude, this girl's crazy. But Dominic, he's convinced that underneath all that anger and manipulation, there's someone worth saving. But one day in 2022, it gets really crazy between them because they're in her car cruising along the highway and Mackenzie's driving and they get into an argument like they often do. And they start fighting and they're yelling at each other and she's crying and calling him all kinds of names. And this isn't unusual. They fight in the car all the time. But this time, something different happens. Suddenly, pow, she starts hitting him from the driver's seat. And we're not talking about playful slaps or anything like that. She's actually hitting him while she's driving, taking her hands off the wheel to swing at him. And so Dominic, he gets scared. I mean, he thinks she might accidentally crash the car. This is dangerous behavior, and he realizes that they could both get seriously hurt or killed. And so he calls his mom to come help him. I guess he wants her to pick him up if he can ever get Mackenzie to pull over. And Mackenzie, she's so pissed off that she threatens to crash the car on purpose and kill them both. That is psycho behavior. She's literally threatening murder-suicide because she's mad at her boyfriend. Well, luckily, she doesn't end up crashing the car, and I guess they work it out for the time being. But this incident really shakes Dominic up. He's starting to realize that Mackenzie isn't just mean or difficult. She's actually dangerous. The fact that she would threaten to kill both of them just because she's angry, that's not normal relationship drama. That's seriously disturbed behavior. However, her crazy behavior does put a strain on their relationship. And at some point, Dominic decides, yeah, it's about time to break up with her for good. I mean, he feels like this relationship has pretty much run its course. He's tired of walking on eggshells, tired of the constant drama, tired of being threatened and abused. He wants to find someone who actually treats him with respect and kindness. But here's the thing about toxic relationships. They're incredibly hard to break free from. Even when you know someone is bad for you, even when you know they're hurting you, there's this cycle of abuse that keeps pulling you back in. And Mackenzie, she's a master manipulator. She knows exactly what buttons to push to get Dominic to come back to her. 2 weeks later, Mackenzie and Dominic are still together, and they both go to a friend's party. And this is where things get really interesting because this party is going to be the beginning of the end for both of them. The party is at a friend's house in Strongsville, and it's your typical teenage party, loud music, underage drinking, people hanging out, and having what they think is a good time. And they have a lot of fun at this party. I mean, they're hanging out, they're socializing with their friends, and for once, they're not fighting. Dominic is drinking beer, probably some shots, just having a good time with his buddies. Mackenzie is apparently not drinking, but she's smoking a little weed. And you know what? Maybe the combination of alcohol and marijuana is helping them both chill out and not get into their usual drama. For a few hours, they actually look like a normal couple. They're laughing together, they're affectionate with each other, and their friends are probably thinking, hey, maybe they finally figured it out. Maybe they're going to make it work. But of course, this is just the calm before the storm. And after that, they leave and go to another friend's party, and they have fun there, too. So now they've been party hopping, and it's getting late or early, depending on how you look at it. The second party is even more low-key than the first one, just a small group of friends hanging out, talking, maybe playing some games. And Mackenzie and Dominic, they're still getting along, still acting like a normal couple. But here's the thing about Mackenzie. She's always been unpredictable. 1 minute she's sweet and loving. The next minute she's screaming and threatening violence. And even though she seems to be in a good mood tonight, there's always this underlying tension with her. It's like she's a time bomb just waiting to go off. And around 5:30 a.m., they're all done. They're about to leave this second party and go home. And a friend of Dominic's needs a ride home, too. This guy, his name's Davion Flanagan. Davion is 19 years old, and he's actually a really good friend of Dominic's. They've known each other for years, and Davion is one of those guys who's always in a good mood, always making people laugh. Davion is the kind of person who would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. He's working a job, he's got his own car, but it's in the shop or something, so he needs a ride home. And Dominic, being the good friend that he is like, yeah, no problem, we'll give you a ride. And so Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion, they're all three in the car headed home. Mackenzie is driving her 2022 Nissan Sentra, and she's probably still a little high from the weed she smoked earlier, but she's driving slow and she's careful. So, that might be okay. In fact, you can see footage of them rounding the corner here, and it looks like they're going at a normal speed. The footage shows them driving through the industrial area of Strongsville, and everything looks normal. They're not speeding, they're not swerving, they're just three friends heading home after a long night of partying. Davion is probably in the back seat, maybe dozing off or just chilling and listening to music. Dominic is in the passenger seat, probably tired, but happy that they had a good night without any major drama. And Mackenzie, she's behind the wheel, and for once she seems calm and in control. But appearances can be deceiving, especially when it comes to someone as volatile as McKenzie Shirilla. Now, none of us know what really happens inside the car beyond this point, but we can assume based on past behavior that Mackenzie and Dominic start fighting. Maybe it's something small. Maybe she makes a comment about one of his friends, or maybe he says something that sets her off. Or maybe she's just tired and irritable and looking for a reason to start something. But whatever triggers it, that familiar pattern starts up again. The arguing, the name calling, the escalating tension. And Davion, poor guy, he's just sitting in the back seat probably thinking, oh, great, you go again. He's probably seen them fight before, and he knows how ugly it can get. And that is when she just snaps. Something inside Mackenzie's brain breaks, and she goes from 0 to murderous in about 2 seconds. She floors it, pedal to the metal, and the car takes off. And she's so mad that she's going to kill everyone in the car, including herself. And of course, Dominic's probably like, what the hell? Slow down. And he tries to stop her. He realizes that she's not just driving fast. She's driving with intent to kill. And he allegedly grabs the gear shift and he throws it into neutral, trying to slow the car down and prevent what he knows is about to happen. But Mackenzie grabs the shift herself and rams it back into drive. She's determined to go through with this, and nothing Dominic does is going to stop her. And she keeps on going faster and faster. By now, Davion realizes what's happening too, and he's probably screaming for her to stop trying to grab the wheel, doing whatever he can to prevent the inevitable. And she gets the car up to 90 miles an hour. In an industrial area with lots of buildings and obstacles, 90 miles an hour is basically a death sentence. But she's not done yet. As they reach the end of that street, she doesn't ease her foot off the gas. She doesn't stop. She doesn't brake. She doesn't turn. She keeps on speeding, accelerating toward a brick wall on the side of a building. And she gets the car to nearly 100 miles an hour. The engine is screaming, the tires are probably smoking, and inside the car there's probably chaos. Dominic and Davion are probably both trying to grab the wheel, trying to get her to stop, but she's completely committed to this course of action. And suddenly, kaboom, she crashes into the wall head-on. The sound of the impact is incredible. You can hear it from blocks away. Metal crumpling, glass shattering, the terrible sound of lives being destroyed in an instant. Here is actually security footage of Mackenzie's car just before it hits. You can see the car approaching the building at an incredibly high speed, and there's no sign of braking or any attempt to avoid the collision. It's like watching a missile strike a target. And here's a picture of the wall after it was hit. The brick wall is completely destroyed, with debris scattered everywhere. The force of the impact was so great that it actually damaged the structural integrity of the building itself. And here's a picture of Mackenzie's car. It's almost unrecognizable as a vehicle. The front end is completely crushed, the windshield is shattered, and the car is actually split in half from the force of the impact. It looks like something you'd see in a movie, except this is real life and real people died in this twisted metal. And here's the car from another angle. You can see that the passenger compartment is completely destroyed. There's no way anyone could have survived this crash in the front seats. The steering wheel is bent, the dashboard is crushed, and there's blood and debris everywhere. So yeah, you get it. This is really bad. We're talking about a catastrophic collision that completely destroyed a vehicle and killed two young men in the prime of their lives. And it was all completely preventable. Now they're in an industrial part of town early in the morning, so there's no one around, and it takes about 45 minutes for anyone to see the wreckage and call police. The crash happened at approximately 5:30 a.m. on July 31st, 2022, in the area of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive in Strongsville. The first person to discover the wreckage was a worker who was arriving early for his shift at a nearby business. He saw the destroyed car and immediately called 911. The response time was actually pretty quick once someone called it in, but those 45 minutes between the crash and the discovery probably felt like an eternity for Mackenzie, assuming she was conscious. And so police show up and they can see that the car is all busted up. The car is split in two. There are pieces of metal and glass everywhere. And there's clearly been a catastrophic accident. They immediately call for backup and emergency medical services, knowing that this is going to be a major incident. They find all three occupants unconscious, and they discover that unfortunately Dominic, he didn't make it. He was killed instantly on impact. The force of the collision was so great that there was no chance of survival for anyone in the front seats, and neither did Davion. He was also killed instantly on impact. Even though he was in the back seat, the car was so completely destroyed that the entire passenger compartment collapsed. Both young men died without ever regaining consciousness, which is probably a mercy given the circumstances. While McKenzie, she actually survives. And this is where things get really controversial because some people think it's unfair that she lived while her victims died. But the reality is that sometimes in car accidents, the driver survives because of the way the car is designed and the angle of impact. She's rushed to Metro Health Medical Center in Cleveland, which is a level 1 trauma center. She's in critical condition with multiple injuries, broken bones, internal bleeding, traumatic brain injury. She's there for a while and has to have a bunch of surgeries, but she does end up making it. The doctors who treated her said it was touch and go for a while, and there were several times when they weren't sure she was going to survive. But she's young and strong, and somehow she pulls through. She's eventually discharged from the hospital, and she goes home to recover. Meanwhile, police, they have to investigate all this and figure out what the hell really happened. This is clearly not a normal car accident. The circumstances are too suspicious, the damage is too severe, and the behavior leading up to the crash is too strange for this to be just a tragic accident. So of course, they question McKenzie, but she doesn't claim that she slammed into the brick wall on purpose. No. She says she doesn't remember anything regarding the crash that night. She claims to have amnesia about the entire incident, which is convenient for her, but not very helpful for the investigation. This is actually a pretty common defense strategy in cases like this. When someone does something terrible and there's evidence against them, they often claim they don't remember what happened. Sometimes it's legitimate. Traumatic brain injuries can cause memory loss. But sometimes it's just a way to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. So she's not very helpful. And so they go and they interview Dominic's friends and people in their circle. And their friends tell police yeah, McKenzie was a little nutty in the relationship. In fact, she used to threaten Dominic all the time. The friends paint a picture of a relationship that was toxic and dangerous. They talk about how McKenzie would call Dominic constantly, how she would show up uninvited to places, how she would threaten to hurt herself or him if he tried to break up with her. They describe her as possessive, controlling, and prone to violent outbursts. And police see recordings of her threatening to key his car. These recordings are particularly damning because they show McKenzie in her own words making threats against Dominic's property. You can hear the anger in her voice, the sense of entitlement, the willingness to cause damage just because she's not getting her way. "I will key your car if you do not let me in the house," she says on one recording. And when Dominic asks, "You going to key my car?" she responds without hesitation, "I will if you don't let me in the house." Yes. Police are also told about the fight McKenzie and Dominic got in weeks before where she got really pissed off and threatened to crash the car on purpose and kill her and him both. This is probably the most important piece of evidence in the entire case because it shows that McKenzie had previously threatened to do exactly what she ended up doing. Multiple witnesses confirm that McKenzie had threatened to crash the car before. This wasn't just a moment of temporary insanity. This is a pattern of behavior that had been building for months. She had actually used the threat of murder-suicide as a weapon in their relationship, and eventually, she followed through on that threat. And while police continue to investigate McKenzie, she's out here living her best life. And this is where her behavior becomes truly disturbing because instead of showing remorse or grief for the two young men who died, she seems to be enjoying the attention. Like a few weeks after being discharged from the hospital, she's caught attending a concert. And here she's in a wheelchair because she's still recovering from the accident, but she's out there having a good time like nothing happened. She's got friends pushing her around. She's taking selfies. She's acting like she's at a fun event rather than someone who was just involved in a double fatality. The fact that she's out partying while the families of Dominic and Davion are planning funerals is just mind-blowing. Any normal person would be consumed with grief and guilt, but McKenzie seems to be treating this like it's just another life experience. She also goes back to making TikToks like this one, "I'm not even cool. I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die." And notice how she adds the caption, "Google McKenzie Shirilla, Strongsville, Ohio." Like, she wants you to Google her and see that she was driving the car and got into a horrible accident that killed her boyfriend. Because that's the only thing that comes up when you Google her. She wants attention from all this. She's literally trying to become famous for killing two people. This is the behavior of someone who has no remorse, no empathy, no understanding of the gravity of what she's done. Most people would be trying to lay low, trying to avoid attention, trying to process their grief and guilt. But McKenzie is actively seeking fame and attention from this tragedy. Not only that, she goes out for Halloween to a party dressed up as, and I'm not making this up, dressed up as a corpse. The irony is absolutely sickening. She's dressed up as a dead person while two actual dead people are in the ground because of her actions. And she actually takes multiple pictures throughout the night and posts them on social media. She's not trying to hide her costume choice, she's proud of it. She wants everyone to see that she's dressed up as a corpse, and she wants them to make the connection to the crash. And I guess she must have dressed up twice because later she dresses up like lean while her friend dresses up as a joint. Lean is a mix of cough syrup and soda. It's a drug that's particularly dangerous and has been linked to numerous overdose deaths. And so they dress up like drugs and dead bodies for Halloween. The symbolism here is incredibly disturbing. She's making light of death and drug use just months after killing two people in a crash that may have been influenced by substance use. It's like she's mocking the entire situation. They even make some TikToks about it. She's literally creating social media content about being a dead person and using drugs, and she's doing it all with a smile on her face. This is sociopathic behavior. Anyway, while police are still working hard on this case, they get access to McKenzie's Crash Cars Event Data Recorder, aka its black box. Modern cars have these devices that record information about the vehicle's operation in the moments before a crash. It's like an airplane's black box, but for cars. The black box contains crucial information about the crash. Things like vehicle speed, brake application, steering input, and throttle position. This data can't be manipulated or faked, so it provides an objective record of what happened in those final moments. Well, they get access to it, and it shows that the night of the crash, after McKenzie floored it, she never tried to slow down. The data shows that she accelerated continuously from about 35 miles per hour to nearly 100 miles per hour in the final moments before impact. There's no indication that she ever attempted to put her foot on the brake at all. And the data also shows that she jerked the steering wheel at the last second, which veered them off the road and directly into the brick wall. This wasn't a case of falling asleep at the wheel or losing control. This was a deliberate action. She steered the car directly into the wall. The black box data is absolutely damning. It shows that this crash was not an accident, not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a deliberate act of murder. McKenzie had control of the vehicle the entire time, and she chose to accelerate into that wall. And so police, they're looking at all this evidence and they start thinking, this crash seems intentional, like she was trying to kill everyone in the car, including herself. The evidence is overwhelming. The threats she made in the past, the pattern of abusive behavior, the black box data, the complete lack of any attempt to avoid the collision. Detective Julie Jura, the lead investigator on the case, reviews all the evidence and concludes that this was murder, not an accident. The computer demonstrated that there was no attempt to slow down or stop. It was full speed into a building. Tragically, it cost two people their lives. And so, bam, they go and they arrest her. The arrest happens several months after the crash in November 2022. By this time, McKenzie has fully recovered from her injuries and is back to her normal life, posting on social media and acting like nothing happened. "Hi, McKenzie. Step out for me. I'm Detective Jura. I'm the one who's been investigating the crash. You're under arrest for aggravated murder ×2. The arrest is captured on body camera footage, and McKenzie seems genuinely surprised, as if she thought she was going to get away with it. Here's her mugshot. She's charged with multiple counts of murder, aggravated vehicular homicide, and other related charges. The prosecutors are seeking the maximum penalty, arguing that this was a premeditated double murder. The case against McKenzie is built on several key pieces of evidence. First, there's a history of threats and violent behavior in her relationship with Dominic. Multiple witnesses testify that she had previously threatened to crash the car and kill them both. Second, there's the black box data from the car, which shows that she accelerated continuously and never attempted to brake or avoid the collision. This data is objective and can't be disputed. Third, there's her behavior after the crash. The lack of remorse, the social media posts, the Halloween costume, the attempts to gain fame from the tragedy. All of this points to someone who is not sorry for what she did. The case goes to trial in August 2023. McKenzie chooses to have a bench trial, meaning that a judge rather than a jury will decide her fate. This is actually a risky strategy because judges are often less sympathetic than juries, especially in cases involving young defendants. The trial lasts several days and features testimony from dozens of witnesses. Friends and family members of both Dominic and Davion testify about the impact of their deaths. Law enforcement officers explain the evidence they gathered. Medical experts discuss the injuries and the cause of death. Throughout the trial, the prosecution argues that McKenzie intentionally crashed the car in order to kill both her boyfriend and his friend. They present evidence of her history of threats, her volatile behavior, and the black box data that proves the crash was intentional. The defense, on the other hand, argues that this was an accident, that McKenzie lost control of the vehicle due to fatigue or substance use. They claim that she has no memory of the crash and that she never intended to hurt anyone. But the evidence is overwhelming. The judge, Margaret Russo, listens to all the testimony and reviews all the evidence. And on August 14, 2023, she delivers her verdict. Judge Russo finds McKenzie guilty on all counts, for counts of murder, for counts of felonious assault, and 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide. In delivering her verdict, Judge Russo calls McKenzie hell on wheels and said that this was a mission of death. This was not reckless driving. This was murder, Judge Russo says. She had a mission, and she executed it with precision. The mission was death. A week later, McKenzie goes to trial and she's sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The sentence is actually 2 concurrent life sentences, one for each victim. The sentencing hearing is emotional, with family members of both victims giving impact statements. Dominic's father, Frank Russo, makes a surprising statement. He says he doesn't want McKenzie to spend the rest of her life in prison. It's horrible for everybody. Yeah, I lost my son. It's harder on our family, but I don't want the rest of her life ruined too. It isn't going to make me feel any better, he tells the court. But despite his forgiveness, Judge Russo imposes the maximum sentence allowed by law. She says that McKenzie's actions were so heinous and showed such a complete disregard for human life that the maximum penalty is appropriate. McKenzie's case doesn't end there, though. Her defense team files an appeal, arguing that the evidence was insufficient to prove murder and that the sentence was too harsh. They claim that new medical evidence suggests she may have had a neurological episode that caused the crash. But the appeals court isn't buying it. In September 2024, the Ohio Court of Appeals upholds McKenzie's conviction and sentence. The court finds that the evidence was more than sufficient to prove that she intentionally crashed the car. The case then goes to the Ohio Supreme Court, but in early 2025, they declined to hear the appeal. This means that McKenzie's conviction and sentence are final, and she will remain in prison for at least 15 years before she's eligible for parole. Even then, parole is not guaranteed. Given the nature of her crimes and her complete lack of remorse, it's entirely possible that she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. The McKenzie Shirilla case is a stark reminder of how toxic relationships can escalate to deadly violence. It's also a cautionary tale about the dangers of social media culture and the pursuit of fame at any cost. 2 young men lost their lives that night, Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan. They were both just starting their adult lives. Both had hopes and dreams and people who loved them. Their deaths were not just tragic, they were completely preventable. Dominic's friends and family remember him as a kind, loyal person who always tried to see the best in people. He was working, he had his own place, and he was trying to build a life for himself. His only mistake was staying in a relationship with someone who was dangerous. Davion was described as someone who was always laughing, always trying to make other people happy. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, a victim of someone else's rage and mental illness. Their families continue to grieve their loss, and they've had to relive the trauma through the trial and appeals process. The pain they feel will never fully go away, but hopefully they can find some peace in knowing that justice was served. As for McKenzie, she's currently serving her sentence at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville. She's now 21 years old and will be at least 36 before she's eligible for parole. She's lost her youth, her freedom, and any chance at a normal life. The case has also had a broader impact on the community. It's raised awareness about the warning signs of domestic violence and the importance of taking threats seriously. It's also sparked discussions about mental health resources for young people and the responsibility of social media platforms to prevent the glorification of violence. The McKenzie Shirilla case is a tragedy on multiple levels. It's a story about young love gone wrong, about mental illness and violence, about the consequences of toxic relationships. But most of all, it's a reminder that words matter, that threats should be taken seriously, and that sometimes the people we love the most can be the most dangerous. In the end, McKenzie got what she wanted. She became famous. But it's not the kind of fame that anyone would want. She's not an influencer or a social media star. She's a convicted murderer who will be remembered for taking the lives of two innocent young men. The case serves as a warning to others who might be in similar situations. If someone threatens to hurt you or themselves, take it seriously. If someone is violent or abusive, don't try to fix them. Get help and get away. And if you see the warning signs in a friend's relationship, speak up. You might save someone's life. The McKenzie Shirilla case is closed, but its lessons will continue to resonate for years to come. It's a stark reminder that domestic violence can happen to anyone, and that sometimes the person you love the most can be the one who destroys your life. And that's the story of McKenzie Shirilla, the girl who became hell on wheels and destroyed multiple lives in the process. She's currently serving her sentence, and hopefully she's finally getting the mental health treatment she needed years ago. But for Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, it's too late. They paid the ultimate price for someone else's inability to control their anger and violence. The case stands as a testament to the work of law enforcement officers who refused to accept that this was just a tragic accident. Through careful investigation and analysis of the evidence, they were able to prove that this was murder and ensure that justice was served. It's also a reminder of the importance of the justice system in holding people accountable for their actions. Despite her youth and the attempts to portray her as a victim, McKenzie was held responsible for her choices and is now paying the price for them. The McKenzie Shirilla case will be studied for years to come as an example of how domestic violence can escalate to murder, how social media can be used to glorify violence, and how the justice system can work to hold killers accountable for their actions. In the end, 2 young men are dead, a young woman is in prison for life, and multiple families are forever changed. It's a tragedy that could have been prevented if the warning signs had been heeded and if help had been sought before it was too late. The story of McKenzie Shirilla is a cautionary tale for our times, a reminder that behind the carefully curated social media posts and the pursuit of online fame, there can be darkness that destroys lives. But let's dive deeper into what happened during the investigation, because there are some details that really showed just how calculating and cold McKenzie was throughout this entire ordeal. When police first started investigating this case, they knew something was off. You don't just accidentally drive into a brick wall at 100 miles per hour. But they had to build a case, and that meant talking to everyone who knew McKenzie and Dominic. One of the most important witnesses was McKenzie's own friend, who told police about a conversation she had with McKenzie just days before the crash. According to this friend, McKenzie had said something along the lines of, "I'm going to crash this car and kill us both." She had made this threat multiple times, and her friends had gotten so used to hearing it that they didn't take it seriously anymore. But this wasn't just empty talk. McKenzie had actually researched methods of suicide and murder-suicide online. Her internet search history, which was recovered by police, showed searches for things like how to kill someone with a car and survival rates in car crashes. This wasn't a spontaneous act of violence. This was premeditated murder. The police also discovered that McKenzie had been stalking Dominic's social media accounts and those of his friends. She had been monitoring who he was talking to, who he was hanging out with, and what he was doing when he wasn't with her. This obsessive behavior is typical of someone who is possessive and controlling, but it also shows the level of planning that went into her final act. One particularly disturbing piece of evidence was a voice message that McKenzie had left on Dominic's phone just hours before the crash. In the message, she's crying and saying things like, "I can't live without you, and if I can't have you, nobody can." This message was recovered from Dominic's phone, which was found in the wreckage of the car. The investigation also revealed that McKenzie had been physically abusive to Dominic on multiple occasions. Friends and family members testified that they had seen bruises on Dominic's arms and face, and that he had made excuses for them. One friend testified that Dominic had confided in him that McKenzie had hit him with a baseball bat during an argument. But perhaps the most chilling piece of evidence was McKenzie's behavior in the hours leading up to the crash. Security footage from the parties they attended that night shows McKenzie acting strangely. She's not drinking, but she's constantly checking her phone and looking agitated. At one point, she's seen having an animated conversation with someone on the phone, and witnesses later testified that she seemed to be arguing with someone. The prosecution argued that McKenzie had already decided to kill Dominic and herself that night, and that she was just waiting for the right moment. The fact that Davion was in the car was just bad luck. He was an innocent bystander who got caught up in McKenzie's murderous plan. During the trial, the prosecution brought in expert witnesses to testify about the dynamics of abusive relationships. They explained how abusers often escalate their behavior when they feel like they're losing control of their victim. In McKenzie's case, she knew that Dominic was planning to break up with her for good, and she couldn't handle the thought of losing him. The defense, meanwhile, tried to argue that McKenzie was the victim of her own mental illness. They brought in psychiatrists who testified that she suffered from depression, anxiety, and possibly borderline personality disorder. They argued that she was not in control of her actions the night of the crash and that she should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. But the prosecution was able to counter this argument by showing that McKenzie's behavior after the crash was inconsistent with someone who was suffering from a mental health crisis. A truly mentally ill person would have been consumed with guilt and remorse. But McKenzie was out partying and posting on social media within weeks of the crash. The trial also featured testimony from accident reconstruction experts who analyzed the crash scene and the damage to the car. They were able to show that the crash was not accidental, that McKenzie had deliberately steered the car into the wall at the last second. The angle of impact, the skid marks on the road, and the damage to the car all pointed to intentional action. One of the most powerful moments in the trial came when the families of the victims gave their impact statements. Dominic's mother, Christine Russo, broke down in tears as she described the pain of losing her son. She talked about how Dominic had been planning to propose to a new girlfriend, how he had been saving up money to buy a house, and how he had been excited about his future. Davion's family also spoke about their loss. His mother, Tanisha Flanagan, said that Davion had been her youngest child and that she had been looking forward to watching him grow up and start a family of his own. She said that McKenzie had not only taken away her son's life, but had also taken away her dreams of being a grandmother.